The trilogy is the perfect storytelling format for cinema. Origins of the trilogy format go all the way back to the 5th century BCE, which is the Orestria, a Greek tragedy. Over the years, this format was adopted throughout literature, art, and film. In cinema, trilogies existed long before their big popularity. Frankenstein had a trilogy, for example. The trilogy format itself didn't become popularized in film until, likely, the original Star Wars trilogy. This all goes to say that ever since 1977, there have been amazing stories told in the trilogy format. I have a Star Wars channel, so I kinda get how that works. Ha, subscribe. The original Star Wars was a standalone movie. George Lucas thought it was going to be a failure, so when it opened up in theaters, he was at the beach. This trilogy was never meant to go past the original film. But it did. Why? Aside from Empire Strikes Back being the perfect sequel, it's because each installment following Star Wars was connected enough to be a part of the universe, while also being able to be enjoyed as a standalone film. In an ideal trilogy, the first film establishes the thesis of a 3-part narrative. The second film then challenges it with the antithesis, usually dealing with the darker and mature subject matter. The third film is a synthesis between the two, reconciling the conflict between both ideas in a harmonious balance. Now let's play Guess the Trilogy. In the first film, the lead character's world is established as a rebellious fight for their freedom and overall justice from a constraining influence, perhaps of the tyrannical kind. In the sequel, the lead prematurely confronts their complicity in its influence, manifesting in the form of the external threat, typical in an arch nemesis, who challenges the lead's internal conflict, typically their submission to untamed anger. Then, in the final installment, the lead contends with these new challenges by striking an internal emotional balance, reconciling their noble desire for a reasonable life with their reckless, raging passion to obtain it. Self-control and self-autonomy amidst the forces of chaos is the one true path to not just physical, but also mental and spiritual freedom. They prosper by remaining determined in not stooping to their enemy's level, by upholding their honor and dignity in the eyes of their peers and disciples.
Planet of the Apes was sort of my Star Wars before Star Wars.
The framework is indeed the basis for not only the structure of a trilogy, but all 3-act stories about the underdog rising and overcoming the greatest obstacle, reaching their peak selves. Some of the best stories ever put to film have been done in this format. The Godfather, Die Hard, Aliens, Terminator, 1 through 3, Pirates of the Caribbean, 1 through 3, and Lord of the Rings. Nowadays, because trilogies are a concept that people use more commonly, they're typically planned out. Lord of the Rings was shot back to back to back. Dead Man's Chest and At World's End were filmed side by side. But in the age of franchises, the trilogy can transform into expanded universes, like the no conclusion we'll ever get to Transformers The Last Knight, or Pirates Dead Men Tell No Tales, which we can kind of excuse those. While most people speak about the Planet of the Apes with a lot of favoritism and fondness, they are still not regarded as a top trilogy of all time. Why is that? This isn't some run-of-the-mill story. It's an exceptional piece about humanity, shown through the lens of an ape. The series came out during the overuse of CGI and VFX, and looked better than pretty much any film during its time. And with a lead character that, with little dialogue, delivers emotion, energy, and thought-provoking actions every time he's on screen. The exceptional motion capture performance for the Caesar character by the legendary Andy Serkis is just chef's kiss.
So many other franchises, summer movies, there's a very narrow band of what entertainment is in the summer.
And it can get lost in the wonderful popcorn
for
element.
sure. Yeah, I mean, and it's nothing about that. It's just that fits a very narrow band. And this one sneaks under the radar because, a lot of the movies that come out over the summer, they're about a certain kind of spectacle. So like amazing action, some kind of effects that you haven't seen. In this, the effects and the spectacle relate directly to emotion. They have to do with us holding a mirror up to ourselves by looking into the faces of apes and recognizing ourselves in them and looking at our own nature and the struggle within all of us.
So where is Planet of the Apes? A trilogy that sat right in the middle of the superhero hysteria of the Avengers age, and the decrease of overall story quality and CGI. Like, how do Davy Jones and Megatron look better in 2006 and 2007 than anything from Ant-Man or Flash? I'm getting distracted, but are you seeing my point? In an age where stories have lacked their conviction, we had 3 beautiful movies that told not just a compelling narrative with gorgeous cinematography, but didn't buy into the cinematic universe hype. Planet of the Apes didn't diverge into streaming shows. It paced out its story and gave us everything with 3 fantastic movies. I just rewatched them and I'm buzzing to talk about them, so if you've seen the movies and don't want the funny recap, skip to this time mark. If not, let's talk about the monkeys. Rise is the intro to the series. It starts with a jungle somewhere, with people hunting the apes. They're sent to a genetic lab where they're given magic serum.
We gave her what we call ALZ-112.
Oh, is that truth serum?
Bright Eyes, the first chimp we see, is Caesar's mom. She breaks out, gets shot, and they euthanize every ape for money reasons. Caesar is raised by this guy named Will, the guy from the interview, and he takes care of little Ape. Caesar has a nice life. When he sees Will's dad, Charles, or better known as the Great Lord Farquaad, get a dose of that magic serum to cure Alzheimer's.
This is truth serum.
And he does IRL Tinder for Will and Caroline. Time skip and the big chimp is 8 years old. But uh-oh, this nasty-ass pilot points to our Lord and Savior 3 times, naturally upsetting Caesar and especially me. So Caesar bites him and gets to hang around Draco Malfoy in a monkey prison, because ever since getting kicked out of magic school, Draco has resorted to torturing primates. Caesar gets bullied by Rocket, but they end up becoming besties, so that's cool. Caesar then drugs the other apes, they zap Draco, and then there's the big monkey breakout. Also,
take your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape!
oh, that's so badass. You get this awesome shot with Caesar, Maurice, Rocket, and Buck before the 6-hour battle for the Golden Gate Bridge. Also, pretty cool that Godzilla, a kaiju, an alien, or 50 other entities didn't destroy the bridge here. Like, the Golden Gate Bridge actually survives for once, which is actually kind of cool. Apes escape and Caesar tells Will that
Caesar is home.
So Will watches Caesar climb with a beautiful heroic theme, and then the pilot guy who pointed at Charles has a bloody nose. Before I go into Dawn, watching these series after living through COVID is a trip. It's like literally a trip. Like the whole scene with the piano and the various media sources in Dawn and the map of the globe with the red dots. Woo! This alone should have won the movie an Oscar. Too bad Interstellar was born and we thought that could never happen to us. Anyway, apes are in the forest. It's been 10 years and Big Chimp Man is 18 years old. I did the maths. He and his brigade of apes are preparing for the hunt in this haunting scene where they chase down deer. Koba then kills the last grizzly bear in California since 1924, as he and Caesar have a little laugh about it. Blue Eyes and his dad return home just in time for 1,200 monkey witch doctors to welcome them for the birth of Cornelius.
Whoa, speaking of monkey fuck.
Despite these witch doctors figuring out monkey medicine, they bring Blue Eyes in to meet Cornelius with an open wound. Ash and Blue Eyes are doing their little thing and they come across a human. The dude shoots one of them and the apes show up. Humans run home and Commissioner Gordon sends them back to the forest to get the power. But first, the apes make a show of strength.
That's a hell of a lot more than 80.
The humans wait for the apes to leave and then follow them back. Malcolm makes the case to Caesar and the apes and he gets a chance to stay. At the same time, Koba is investigating a human armory. He's outraged, but Caesar shows compassion for the humans and gives them a chance. There's a slight back and forth, but Caesar beats Koba's ass, and the humans restore power. Koba then shoots Caesar and blames the humans before waging war on the people. Honestly, it doesn't get much better. Like, this is pure cinema. The silent celebration and the apes marching on the city, then you have the 360 shot and the apes win the fight. Caesar is then rescued and brought to Will's house, where he can see the footage from when he was a little dude.
Kim Jong-un has just pooed in his pants.
It's honestly very endearing. The fact that an ape made me feel more than almost anything I saw in 2014 other than absolute pain is insane. Caesar and his buddies break out and begin a rebellion. Essentially, Koba has the high ground. Get it? I have a Star Wars channel, subscribe. Malcolm tries to stop Lord Shen from blowing up the building, but he does and fails. Koba and Caesar have an epic fight at the top of the tower, and Caesar says this awesome line.
You are not ape.
Before dropping Koba to his death. Can I say how crazy it is that Koba kills Jacobs, that one dude from the genetic lab, the same way he dies? Fall damage. Caesar reunites with Cornelia, Blue Eyes, and Cornelius. The real war is set to begin, but all the apes are ready to serve with Caesar once more. War starts in the forest, with a text prelude, which is something different from the other movies, but again, sticks to the point that each film can stand on its own. What follows is a gorgeous fight scene between the apes and the Colonel Squad. Some of the apes join the humans, hoping to get a good deal out of it. One of them is named Red. Remember that for later. Caesar's counterattack wins the battle, and he shows the troops mercy. By this point, Caesar is 20 years old, 2 years having passed since Dawn, and he is speaking almost fluently by this point. It's actually crazy. He lets the captured troops go, and an albino gorilla gets attacked before eventually running away. That night, the colonel himself and his squad sneak in and kill Cornelia and Bright Eyes. Caesar chases him down, but he escapes. The apes prepare for their escape to the hidden land that Bright Eyes and Rocket discovered, but Caesar believes he needs to seek revenge, so he leaves. His homies Maurice, Luca, and Rocket join up with him. He eventually kills the two with a mute girl daughter, and Maurice brings her along. Caesar struggles with his inner human, which is the same disease that plagued Koba, revenge. The apes find Bad Ape, or Green Eyes, because don't you ever call him Bad Ape. He is the greatest ape. He's funny. I like him.
But you ape. Like me. No, put down.
Green Eyes is a testament that the other apes away from San Fran can speak and think for themselves, proving that this might indeed be a planet of apes.
No touch.
Luca is killed, and Caesar discovers not just more mute humans, but his entire community of apes captured by Colonel Haymitch. You know, the guy from the Hunger Games? Caesar too also gets captured, and his primates have turned on him because he abandoned them. He realizes what his need for vengeance cost him, and similar to Rise, he helps them escape. Caesar goes to confront the colonel, but he's not human anymore, just a creature without the power to speak. With the battle commencing, Caesar tries to escape, but then he's shot by Preacher, that guy he let escape earlier, and I can't wait for him to die. But the gorilla named Red from earlier sees Caesar for the leader he is and saves him. Caesar blows up the facility, and an avalanche crashes down, wiping out the people. After the humans destroy themselves, Caesar uses all of his strength to get to their sanctuary, and it's there where the trilogy concludes, in a beautiful location that resembles a mural on the inside of the enclosure from Rise. Caesar has his beautiful send-off, one where he talks to his best friend. Triumphant music rises, and Caesar has this moment, one where he realizes he needs to be there for Cornelius, and Marie sees it. So he tells his friend that
Son will know who was father.
it's a really touching moment where Maurice finally speaks, but it ensures that Caesar can know that his son and his species will be taken care of, even without him. So in the triumph of victory, Caesar looks at his primates, finally free from war, and takes both his last smile and his last breath, and I'm crying again.
All the films are very different. Like Rise is different from Dawn, and Dawn is different from War. And this is a war from the thing that's common, that has in common with all the other films, is that through line of Caesar.
As is the point with a trilogy, you should watch all three movies to get the full story. But each film is so rigidly focused on their single respective topic within the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis framework that they completely work on an individual level that leave you fulfilled, while also desiring to see how the story expands and connects new pieces of the overarching puzzle. Rise is a story of evolution, Dawn is a study of humanity, and War is the narrative of Caesar. We've had now 7 years to grieve Caesar, which is why Kingdom is releasing at the perfect time. But what I find so interesting about this trilogy is that unlike the other greatest trilogies of all time, this one is a reboot. The only other trilogy that could be considered a reboot is the Dark Knight trilogy, at least from what I can tell.
I swear to God. Swear to me!
Despite Planet of the Apes being a reboot of a famous tetralogy, it doesn't reboot without paying homage to the stories that came before it. Before writing this video, I didn't just rewatch the goated reboot, I watched all 6 films that came before it: Planet of the Apes, Beneath, Escape, Conquest, Battle, and Planet of the Apes, Marky Mark version.
I don't think it's a transformer. I think we just found a truck.
I'm not going to point out every reference, but I will for those who don't want to watch 6 monkey movies and like 12 hours worth of monkey content, all of which resulting in continuous nights worth of dreams about Planet of the Apes. But this was a trip, like an actual fever dream that made me question reality for a day or two. And yes, I did have a Planet of the Apes dream that was as terrifying as it sounds. But the creators of the Caesar trilogy really took inspiration from the OGs.
Mark Bomback and I, when we sat to write the script, we watched all the Planet of the Apes movies.
These stories were very late 60s, early 70s type of material, like humans evolved to speak without words, or the apes figured out how to take a ship off Earth and go back in time. But the story of the Caesar trilogy, aside from being different to Escape, Conquest, and Battle, could theoretically work as a prequel to the original movie. What I found interesting was how the actual rise of the apes was expertly paralleled, but also uniquely done. For example, the ALZ-113, the drug used to wipe out the humans, is the runtime for the 1968 movie, or like Cornelius, Caesar, Maurice, Buck, and Bright Eyes are all names from the original series. But the tones, specifically with Battle for the Planet of the Apes and Dawn, are eerily similar. While there isn't a plague in Battle of the Planet of the Apes, the humans and apes for the most part are living together, or at least in peace. General Aldo is a gorilla who hates humans, and he sees Caesar as weak.
You did this.
For security.
Did you also raid the armory for the same reason?
For security.
I order you to stop this! I order you to stop it now and release those people!
General Aldo kills Caesar's son and uses Caesar's absence as proof that he isn't a strong leader.
Aldo! You can't do this! You're acting against Caesar's orders!
Caesar is not here.
The irony is, in both Battle and Dawn, the bad ape is represented by a more docile primate species. Both gorillas and bonobos, Koba being the bonobo, are relatively peaceful apes, while chimps are known for being typically more aggressive primates. It seems very clear that despite making the Caesar Trilogy a more realistic take on the Planet of the Apes topic, they paid a lot of respect to the roots of the series. This inspiration is actually why I think the Caesar Trilogy is so good. Let me clarify, I'm not saying the trilogy wouldn't stand on its own without references. What I am saying is the trilogy thrives because it knows how to remember something happening without obsessing over its existence. For fans of the original series, there are Easter eggs and callbacks without doing anything over the top.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Take your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape!
While also making sure the story is fluid and in line with how the original series sets up the rise of the Planet of the Apes. I think that is exactly why the 2001 version of Planet of the Apes didn't work.
You stink of humans.
The movie, in Tim Burton fashion, seemed to focus on I don't really know what. Perhaps it was the big reveal at the end, but the story felt so distant. I do appreciate that it's not the same thing as the other movies, but it feels like it strives so hard to be different that it forgets why the original series was good to begin with. To figure out what the 2001 version ending meant, you have to watch a DVD. Turns out the bad ape, Thade, uses a ship to go back in time and conquer Earth or something. Anyways, the Caesar Trilogy and the original series thrive on something that I think the 2001 version lacked, which was an actual ape character. While yes, there was a female chimp named Ari in the 2001 version, she's sidelined for marking Mark. I think the greatness of the Caesar Trilogy and the trilogy of Escape, Conquest, and Battle for the Planet of the Apes are entirely due to their ape characters, and no one does a lead character quite like the Caesar Trilogy.
In this story, the war that is the greatest war is the war within Caesar. He is pushed to a place that he's never been in, and he has to fight to maintain the better side of himself.
Caesar is a unique character, not just in the trilogy itself, but in the last couple decades of cinema. Aside from being a chimpanzee, he's a strong-willed leader, one that struggles with deep, intimate emotions, while also being more complex than the average blockbuster character. Ironically, it might be this reason that the trilogy isn't more revered. Hear me out. No, I see you type in the comment, hear me out. What I'm trying to say is not that Caesar is the problem, but what he is the problem.
Okay.
Let's look at Transformers or the Bayformers. Every installment of those 5 movies, and even the 2 that followed, are human-led. Doesn't matter if it's Dark of the Moon, Rise of Mr. Beast,
$1 million,
or Bumblebee. Each of those movies are about big robots that turn into cars, and Mecha Buck, but all their leads are humans. Now, let's look at Star Wars, a galaxy huge, full of different species, and none of the movies have a lead with a non-human character. My point being, I think general audiences rely heavily on having a human to guide them through a story. The only series that semi-challenges the stands is Avatar, but that dude is like a dude. Look at characters like Davy Jones or Yoda. They thrive because they're either antagonists or side characters. Neither of them have a lead role in their movie, which brings me back to Caesar. I think one of the big reasons this trilogy isn't considered a top trilogy is because the humans don't get the focus that Caesar does. I will get to the whole human point in a second, But first, I want to talk about why Caesar is one of the greatest characters of modern cinema. He's one of the few characters that we get to see in their entire life. Few trilogies complete this. Like Luke Skywalker, we get his birth in Revenge of the Sith, his childhood from Kenobi, his adult years in the original trilogy, his death in The Last Jedi, and his afterlife with The Rise of Skywalker. While commonly formatted in the 3-act structure of a single story, a 3-film trilogy telling the overarching narrative of the lead character's birth and adolescence first, adulthood second, and elderhood and death in the third is quite the rarity. Although seeing a lead's elderhood isn't as common. It usually is just the end of that character's life in some shape or fashion. We literally watch Caesar grow into a powerful primate and understand why he isn't just a great character, but a heavily flawed one. Ironically, some of his greatest flaws are human.
Caesar is the most empathic character in the whole series. You know, he has the bedrock of his character is that he's like a bridge between the species in that he was raised as a human, so he's part human. He has this ability to connect emotionally to both species, and this war story is really about how he is challenged in ways that cause him for the first time to lose his empathy, but he's actually in a way a lot less primitive than some of the humans who are so desperate.
Caesar, no! No.
Which make him such an interesting character to look at. He is a mirror of humanity and he's shown right back at us. Both Caesar and Koba represent the best and worst of us through their own developments.
Caesar love humans more than apes. More than your sons.
Caesar's actions feel seamless, but they're also not predictable. I think the richest version of Caesar's character is present inside of War for the Planet of the Apes. The movie is a character study through and through. It's a focus on someone who has been tormented by 2 years of war and forced to relocate after having saved his people again and again. He's haunted by actions he didn't make, and he's forced to handle the consequences of them. And after he loses his family, he becomes Koba in his own way, because all he cares about at that point is revenge. It's almost irritating because he gets so focused on the Colonel, but I don't see that as a bad thing. You want your characters to struggle internally, and I think aside from the physical burdens throughout war, especially, for Caesar, it's an eternal fight between Caesar and Koba.
The extremes of war start to crack that away so that he's in danger of losing his empathy for humanity. He is on this journey that is filled with hatred and revenge, and the question is, will he be consumed by that hatred, or can he transcend and find a way to still have empathy for the other?
There's something so messianic about Caesar's presence. There are so many glam shots of him that practically look like biblical paintings. Beautiful crowd shots of evangelical nature, like the one at the end of Dawn, is shared with films such as Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Batman vs. Superman.
We watched a lot of actually biblical epics.
While many lead heroes typically derive from the savior archetype, the Planet of the Apes films have the conviction to visually depict Caesar as a Moses-type figure that leads his disciples out of slavery through the desert and to the promised land.
It's a test that if he passes, he'll become a sort of ape Moses, you know, and if he doesn't, he will be destroyed like Koba.
This is a holy war.
Caesar is presented as a Christological figure that these apes seek salvation from. When he is at his most detested by the apes he abandoned, his body is literally strung up and splayed out on a giant wooden stake, like he's about to be crucified.
You use monkey as a dartboard!
His hallucinations of Koba quite bluntly suggest this to be the temptation of Caesar by his own internal devil.
You cannot save them. Apes all die here. Join me. Join me.
Planet of the Apes was sort of my Star Wars before Star Wars.
Then he is essentially reborn anew after the revelation he experiences in the Colonel's sanctuary. Need I say more?
I do see a parallel in terms of the kinds of characters that Caesar and Batman are, in that they're sort of tortured souls who are struggling to find a way to do the right thing in an imperfect world. And I think for me, it's the emotionality of these Apes films and of Caesar's story that draws me in, and I feel like there's a chance to do a very engaging, very immersive, point of view driven Batman story that could be very emotional.
Ape. Not kill.
I'm vengeance.
Ape.
Caesar is named after Julius Caesar, the king and general for the Roman Empire.
You're him. You're Caesar.
In the context of this reboot, Caesar, the ape, is very much so in the same positions of leadership. But for, well, his ape empire, what the city of Rome is to Julius Caesar, the entirety of planet Earth is to Caesar, their own grand-scale sandboxes for rule and dominance. There's a reason I believe Caesar is such an important character, aside from being compassionate to humans and apes, and being a great leader. He's a reflection of us. These movies are also exactly that.
It's a pretty rare thing in a summer franchise to be able to look at human nature as the subject of the movie.
What we are is best depicted through 3 human leads in each of these movies. Aside from the intro to Rise, human characters take a back seat and are treated as expendable. For example, remember Malcolm, that pretty chill dude from Dawn? Yeah, he was killed by the Colonel in a deleted scene for war.
Malcolm. I shot him. You had dangerous ideas.
But that's my point. Will, Malcolm, and the Colonel each represent different aspects of our humanity. I think it is also why they succeed at being side characters rather than main characters. Will is our blind devotion to do good. He creates a disease that effectively wipes out all of humanity and makes the apes the ruling primate of the world.
Damn truth serum!
He did it because he wanted to help his father and, after that, other people with Alzheimer's. Jacobs wanted to do it because he had money in his eyes. Malcolm and Commissioner Gordon are our compassion and self-preservation. And while the self-preservation can certainly be applied to the Colonel, I'll explain why it isn't. Malcolm's care for Caesar is one out of compassion and probably even love. But not to the extent that Will did. I'm not saying Will didn't have compassion.
Let's barbecue this motherfucker.
But he is the creator of the ALZ-113. The other guy, the one that I refuse to learn his name, is the positive side of self-preservation. Sure, he talks of a big game when it comes to fighting off the apes, but he didn't act until Koba did. His big thing is defending the other humans. The Colonel is, in a way, the worst of humanity, and I think the same could be said for Preacher. While his tactics do technically make sense,
everything that the Colonel says is true. You can't dismiss him easily.
He almost reveres himself as a Napoleon. He is self-preservation, but his desire to preserve is a reason humanity fizzles out like a burnt fuse. If he were like Commissioner Gordon, he may have killed his son, but fought with other people? Likely not.
I shot him.
Caesar doesn't actively chase war. He avoids it. He only cares about the survival of his people.
Leave us the woods, and the killing can't stop.
At the end of the day, we are apes, right? The thing that we forget is that we're animals. It's we come and we do, interviews to go over Twitter and Skype and all, it's like all of this stuff removes us from the essence of our nature. And, all you have to do is look at the world and see what's going on right now, and you can see us grappling with our nature and, the good and bad of our animal sides.
So using humans as the ambassadors of this side of the plot is brilliant. They definitely are important to the story, but the fact that they aren't the main focus is exactly why these movies work. Despite Will and Caroline being great, if we focus on their relationship or their aftermath following the Battle of the Bridge, we would lose the strength of the focus on Caesar and the apes. Sure, would it be cool to see the apocalypse of the simian flu? Yeah. But 1, that doesn't work in this trilogy, and 2, we already lived it. Ever since the boom of the trilogy format, Planet of the Apes stands out as a unique story in a crowd of underrated masterpieces, badly put together movies, and decent but not overachieving stories. Sure, inspired by his predecessors, but not ripping it off, and definitely not a hack. While the Caesar trilogy certainly gets the respect it deserves from fans and even box office success, it falls short in its conversational value. Everyone always says Godfather, original Star Wars, or the Dark Knight trilogy, but never does a light shine towards this series. And perhaps the series takes itself too seriously for some audience members, especially war. The Caesar trilogy matches the tone of a dramatic piece like the Godfather series.
Look how they massacred my boy.
Matt Reeves' direction and vision for the latter 2 entries of the Planet of the Apes trilogy is so dour, downbeat, and patient. Studios don't want their blockbuster to adhere to this gritty, melancholic style and tone anymore in favor of Marvel's inoffensive, but tired, fast-paced action comedy formula. And yet Warner Bros., of all studios, allowed Reeves to adapt and evolve his style into the neo-noir aesthetic of the Batman in 2022.
Hey guys.
Even Warner Bros.' sabotaged version of the Justice League was released in the same year of 2017 as War for the Planet of the Apes. It's a series that doesn't falter to the need to overpopulate its media in an effort to keep up with rival cinematic universes and brands. These aren't just summer blockbusters, but well thought out and articulate stories that show us what we're capable of as humans, without being in your face about it too. I remember when I was 10 or 11, when Rise came out, I remember thinking that could never happen. Not the apes escaping, I was on board with that, I mean the other thing. The one that proved everything I just said about our human counterparts in these stories. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
And the idea of telling stories about these photoreal apes is not to tell a story about apes, but to tell a story about us. And we're holding a mirror up to human nature. And we aspire to be Caesar in certain ways because he's dealt with adversity in very heroic ways.
Individuals like Caesar don't just inspire, but pull at our heartstrings as we watch one triumphant movement find its peaceful conclusion. I look forward to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and if you want to see more cinema talk or appreciation for not just Planet of the Apes, but other incredible series and stories, you know what to do.
The end.